Good time to start a business, given inflation, war, electricity bills are high for the office and the looming recession overall. So do you advise people to start a business today?
Yeah, it already sounds very spooky. I think I'll leave the cliches for Marius, every crisis is an opportunity. I'll let him that. But honestly, I think, the crisis is not here yet. I think it's like in 2008 when actually consumers and companies felt the crisis a bit later than it actually started. So I think we speak about it. It has not started yet. People are not really sure what will happen. So whatever is happening right now, it's not crisis, but we could expect something that could be worse, right? So if you want to start a business, it might be even better time to start right now than maybe in a half a year, right? So anyhow, I think looking from tech world's perspective, none of the crisis completely hit the market in the past 20 years or so. So it will keep on growing. It's just a matter of how long do you plan to stay within it. So, I cannot come here and not encourage to create companies, but of course you have to be much more cautious. That's obvious.
And also, given the prolonged period of uncertainty we've been living through already since whatever COVID started 3 years ago. You can delay and delay and delay and delay for forever like this, I guess, as well.
Exactly.
All right. So thanks for the non-cliche answer. So, and in your kind of, I don't know, how do you perceive it? And I guess it's maybe could be a politically sensitive question, but do you feel any changes to the kind of founder-investor dynamic happening this year compared to the roaring 20s of 2020 and 2021? So do you feel that something has changed?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I can jump in here. So, when there is plenty of cash on the market, there is, mostly investors are chasing for the investor. The competition are between, the investors, and then we may see a lot of memes as well, on the internet now, how the things are changed. That actually, when the times happening like we're having today, then the global venture capital are down like 35% comparing, Q4 2021 and Q2 2022. So it's naturally, that the startups are starting, to compete versus, capital. So that's why it's changing, the approach, how actually, the VCs are approaching the startups are approaching VCs. So, and we feel the same. We feel the same naturally, that we getting more and more attention from the startups perspective as well. But we are doing our part too.
Yeah, actually, this dynamic, Rashada series, his name on TikTok and LinkedIn, this guy he's in Redpoint Ventures, he's publishing these quick TikToks about how VCs are, behaving in 2021 and 2022. Exactly. This is a good guy to check out, yeah.
Yeah, those are pretty hilarious. But if you do decide to go out and chase start a company in these scary times and chase some funding options, so what do you do as a pre-seed, maybe seed stage startup? Where do you go? Who do you talk to?
Everyone you can, I guess. Everyone who has money. No, but I think in reality, probably what we've seen lately is in Lithuania, especially, actually we more and more startups started engaging with angels, and we actually saw that they are very active. Before, I think VCs and accelerators would overshadow them, and now it was the only option, and it will still be a very, very important option in the coming years, I think, next to accelerators. And I think then Estonia is probably a different play, but they are super angels. They kept on investing and backing, and as we spoke before, they have kept on creating their own syndicates and funds. So I think the story there is a bit different. But I think Latvia and Lithuania, in this case, it was really the angel activity that kept at least some of the companies alive, helped them to raise the bridges. and now expecting that we are launching as an early stage fund, and then there might be some others launching in around like half a year's time or so. I think the dynamic should really change in that regard, because we'll have quite a lot of dry powder. I think a lot of startups kind of thought that no investments are happening because of the recession, but there was just no money. So I think that actually like the play will change quite a lot.
That brings an interesting question. I'm not sure if you're the right guys to answer it, but in these kind of scary times, I'm wondering what happens to angel investing, because with funds, it's you have your allocations, you have your investment period, it's your job to do this. While an angel investor, private investor, maybe has something to do besides angel investing, maybe it doesn't, but it's their own money primarily. And nobody's forcing them. Nothing depends on them investing. So I'm wondering if they are drying up as well in these periods, or they're just like we believe in these guys, and you buy when there's blood on the street. So have you seen anything regarding this dynamic?
Yeah, probably I can say that that's an opportunity for the angels. Because the angels actually have the advantage. They're moving fast. First of all, the faster the classic VCs. Typically the VCs investments are taking 3 to 6 and more months, when the angel can actually make a decision and invest directly. These times impacts the valuation. So it's another opportunity for the angels to jump in, even to a deals that are typically not for angels, but they're venture rounds sometimes with the good conditions and so on. So it's a good time for the angels. And actually we're seeing, for the last, I think, for the last 2 quarters, more and more angels are participating in the rounds and leading the rounds, in a syndicates. So it's definitely, the angel time now.
Yeah. Also, I'm just thinking, like, one of the things of 2021, and we started the podcast, and we were talked also with Jone and other guests how crazy times are last year, right? And one of the things you could notice is, especially globally, I mean, also maybe a bit here, there was too much money chasing too few good companies. Like, the number of good companies didn't go up exponentially, but people were just competing for chance to, rounds got bigger and everything. And if you think about it, kind of would make sense that the quality of companies has not really dropped dramatically. So, if there were X good founders coming out in Baltics every year, recession or no recession, probably that X should, be the same, right? So angels can pick them up, and everyone can pick them up, I guess.
Exactly. So I am really happy that we'll be also there alongside the angels to this battlefield and the bloodbath, how Uldis called it.
So can you give us a short kind of overview of what have you built already? I guess you're quite developed in the Firstpick story.
Yeah, so I think I'll try to keep it short within this Halloween episode, in the sense that why in the first place we wanted to build Firstpick, and kind of what we build a strategy upon is that we love supporting early stage. We really feel that this is where we have the best fit, but then we struggle a lot to bring those companies to the seed stage immediately after the first ticket that you invest. And I think this is just naturally happens everywhere. Like half a year or 6 months runway is just not enough to get the company really going and super interesting for other funds. So we build a strategy so we could cover even like from pre-idea to seed stage, and then start co-investing together with other funds. And we've tested this model already with our previous funds, and it makes a big difference how much more likely the startups are, how much more likely they are to raise if you are committing like throughout those rounds. So this is what Firstpick is about, is like really covering this earlier stages and trying to save founders time of fundraising, and constantly like keeping those investors updated, and actually just focusing on the business for the kind of upcoming 12-18 months, and then getting into the actual fundraising mode.
And how far do you expect overall, not just you, but like overall in your experience, how far do you expect founders to get on their own before they take outside investment?
Well, it's a question. It's always, how far the founders should go. Should they bootstrap, hustle, and then first of all, do they need the capital at all? That's actually the question that we always ask, for the founders who are coming. Why do you need a venture capital? And is the like fashion driven to raise because want to go after the capital? But I think it's a super important skill overall when it comes to like bootstrapping and hustling and so on. But as Jone mentioned, we at Firstpick, we're looking really, at super early stage when it comes to idea validation and so on. But being realistically, we're expecting that the team is coming with a product build. So basically, that something can be, validated, accelerated, put on a sales machine, and et cetera, et cetera. So we expect that the founders team are doing by themselves by that point. So then we would not only know the ticket that we invest, but actually with our knowledge, with our mentors pool, and then all the acceleration machine jumping in and starting to work together. So that would be the minimum, let's say, expectation from the founder side. Of course, there is sometimes something super cool, on an idea stage that can be as well validated on idea. That's why we have this tool like pre-accelerator that we, working on the MVP level and validating and et cetera, et cetera. But overall, when it comes, to preparing for the next round, we expect that something, is here. And in most cases, it's a product here. So.
Well, you mentioned
something super cool on idea stage is just a second-time founder. That's my thinking.
Adam Newman.
Adam Newman, yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
But you mentioned, like, you try to ask, like, okay, why do you need funds for? What are some answers that are, in your mind, good answers, and some that are not good answers to this question that you have heard?
Yeah, those, not good answers, salaries. So so that's definitely not a good answer. But the founders who actually understand that what is the main difference between growth and scale, and if the founders actually coming with just product, not validated product, not traction, and start talking, I need capital to scale, you cannot scale that is not working. So basically, you're scaling not working things, and you are like disaster. But if it's talking, I need to validate things, I need to know to test some marketing campaigns, I need to know to this, and that's what I need capital for. That's a relevant answer, and then that, indicates that the founder understands, why it actually need the capital for.
The another question, like it's very interesting to look at Lithuania and see how many successful startups come out of bootstrapping mode and how far they have grown. I think, in Baltics, definitely, probably the biggest amount of startups are there, and maybe even in Europe. And what do you guys, think about like bootstrapping as a strategy? Is this a time for more companies to consider it? Is there something these companies can learn from the Lithuanian bootstrapped unicorns?
Yeah, for sure. I would say we always try to encourage every startup that comes to speak with us, whether they can bootstrap to some like next level, or whether they really need to raise that VC capital. Is it because like really it was so fashionable last year and you knew you just could get anything you wanted? Because this year, for sure, you will spend much more time fundraising and then at the end being maybe rejected by everyone. So bootstrapping, for sure, has to be one of the strategies. But surprisingly, with whom we speak, I still see those like first-time founders, they always come fundraising. And I think maybe more like second-time founders or super professionals, probably because they have some kind of cash at their back. I think they're being very smart about that. Okay, we'll just take the product to this level and then we'll come to you to raise the money. And you think then, oh, but maybe I want to invest right now. So this dynamic is like that. I think majority are still fundraising without really evaluating the opportunity to bootstrap.
Is there some secret sauce of Lithuanian bootstrapping? I guess one is being part of the whole Tesonet ecosystem. I guess that has helped. But is there anything else?
It's
I would,
actually a good question. Yeah, I was thinking if like there are so many companies like Omnisend, Kilo Health, Born
exactly.
Panda, Teslanet with all of those products, like so many of them and so many more that are like keeps on growing. I would say that there is not a one secret sauce, but I would like pay attention that majority of those companies were started many years ago, right? So it's not that they came out like 2 years ago. Maybe Kilo is like the latest one, but they have been built for so many years, and all of them have a story how they were rejected by
And there
VC.
were no VCs almost back in the day, right? So
Yeah, angels. Mm.
Well, this is a good study to commission if anyone has a research team available. How to because it's really kind of very successful. Like you already counted those names, and it's kind of long list, and yeah, definitely worth exploring. Maybe we need to do an episode on that. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Like we have this association, Unicorns LT, that unites, like first of all, united all those bootstrapped unicorns, and not only bootstrap, but still majority of them are like that. And the purpose of that organization is actually to share all the knowledge with the other up and coming startups. So I think they're doing a lot, kind of in the closed circle. So for sure, note that, and I think that could be something interesting to talk to.
But interesting, actually, the ecosystem, how it's developed, because, like you mentioned, it started a few years back, and the funds were not that available then. And I'm just thinking, if you look at, I don't know, Estonia, for example, the moment you're starting a company, even if you want to bootstrap, if you're like really good, I mean, there's probably going to be a lot of chances for you to start picking up investments from one of those angel VCs and so on. So, it might not even be possible strategy to do.
you have to be like
You're
have to be an
forced into
island.
venture
Yeah, you have to
capital.
be an island because you cannot say no to all your friends angels who want to invest in your company.
Think about Stan Tamkevi comes and asks to invest, and you're gonna say no. Like it's probably a problem.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to be on Sarama Island to bootstrap.
Or your own
they have
island,
those
though they
islands.
have like 2,000, so you can have a bit more remote island as well than Zarma.
One per startup.
One per startup. Anyway, so speaking of Stan Tankevi and the likes coming to fund you, so do you see signs of slowdown? I mean, Marijus already mentioned, but like further slowdown in the second half of 2022 happening?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the numbers are talking themselves here. Now, if like in the end of Q1, right after January, the first part of the February, there was those rounds like Bolt, like Nord, NordVPN, and et cetera, that everyone was talking that the Baltics are already reached the previous 2021. But the things has changed, and if we look now, so in the end of the Q3, what we having, that the number of deals dropped. Even the leader, like Estonia, who had like 60 deals already closed like this year, but it's still twice as lower as last year, comparing to more than 100 deals closed. Of course, they have that. While in Lithuania, we have 4 times drop, from 80 to 20 deals. Like in Estonia as well, 2 times drop, from 25 to 12 deals, and so on. The same, in the invested capital as well, we're seeing a significant drop, even, from the Estonia's perspective, probably the same, 1.1 and 1.2 billion, it's kind of the same. But if you take out, the deal of the Bolt, the biggest deal, it's for sure it's lower. The same significant lower is seeing in Lithuania and of course in Latvia. Most probably the Q4 is not going to return fast because knowing that the rounds are taking a while, like 6 months and so, it's most probably the deals are on pause, and we're getting some information that some VCs, abroad VCs, stepped aside of some deals and so on. But from another side, we do understand, what's going on, what's happening, that everyone, is aware. But we have a lot of opportunities, a lot of startups, who are going to entering into seeds, Series A, and so on. And this capital sooner or later is going to return. So, my subjective opinion that everything is going to be back, not maybe, in the upcoming quarter, but, in coming few quarters, definitely.
Have you heard any cases of some term sheets being burned or buried?
He's not picking up the phone anymore.
We did actually, but there were very few, I think, in some later stages. But that was more related to the war. I also know some of the stories from our portfolio where the big institutional investors, they are a bit more afraid to invest because the whole business is being done in the region of the war, which also involves, for example, Poland and then the Baltics. So this is how we are seen in the eyes of, I don't know, let's say French, British, or German.
Yeah. It's interesting, actually. You're one of the. We were doing some episodes on this, and we were questioning people, and like mostly you kind of get this polite answer saying no. But yeah, you're. I can see where this could be coming from, because from the eyes, if you're far enough, everything east from whatever Germany looks like, yeah, next to war zone almost, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And last year, there was really a big difference how many inbound our portfolio startups would get from US investors, from really tier one investors just reaching out, let it be analysts or someone. But anyhow, they would be like following every deal that's happening. And starting this year, and I think then like really with Q2, I would say there was a big drop in interest. So very little interest. No one really wants to come there that often or consider some startups. So that for me is a significant change.
Okay, but that's kind of from the funding side and clearly affected by everything that's going on. What about the founder side? Do you see any changes in the quality and quantity of the projects that is coming to you? Are people now staying in their safe jobs better than starting a company? And yeah, what do you see there?
I would subjectively say that we still get a lot of inbound, and we still see a lot of new startups being started. Maybe the difference is that some of those startups, or majority of them, are being done as a side hustle or on a site, which is actually surprisingly okay for us as well for some time, right? Because you understand that this is the situation that we are in right now. And as per quality, we actually have been discussing with Marijus that we see a lot of funny stuff as well. Like we get so much inbound because we're also one of the very few active investors that we really get to see that the quality did not really increase. But I think for VCs in later stages, because there are so many pre-accelerators programs that would just scout and take those startups in and either like let them die or actually grow them to something proper, then I think VCs should see a bit of a more quality deal flow.
Any examples?
Though I've heard they say it has not increased. Like the deal flow, everyone says on the seed stage is pretty low.
Okay. Any examples of this, interesting or crazy things you have seen? Without, of course, too concrete, but maybe like some funny proposals.
For me, there were just like a couple of biggest metaverses in the world that students wanted to create. So I was trying to understand, like, am I not ambitious enough or there and not getting something? I think pony therapy, where you hug a pony, is something also, and you get healed. That's something interesting. I don't know, maybe Marijus got, because he deals with a lot of pre-accelerator stuff. So.
Yeah, for me, I think one of those interesting was building the Web 5. It's actually skipping the Web 4 immediately, so
That's cool.
That's really good.
I mean, overall,
That's very, very futuristic. Yeah.
overall, it's so hard. Sometimes I hear these ideas, and I'm thinking as well, like you have to find a balance between, seeing the visionary and believing them, and discounting the bullshit. And I'm like many people, and I think VCs as a species are more kind of towards this critical, rational, and kind of Shark Tank approach. But sometimes, I mean, one of them, 20 of them maybe does change the world. So it's a very fine art that you guys have to deal with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, having made 50 investments before, we kind of learned that there are very few visionaries, and if you are a visionary, you will still come up with some basic stuff like your P&L and financials and revenues that make sense. So there is no magic in that.
Yeah, it's a balance. I'm not saying I 100% agree to this quote by an ex-German chancellor, but he said like if you see visions, you should see a doctor. So sometimes it's also
That's what sounds very German.
yeah.
All right, so thanks for these insights, and I think second topic that we wanted to talk to you about was something that Jone was mentioning at the end of the first part about P&L and reality. So I think that the situation where we are is bringing us much closer to reality, and probably a healthy process in any companies and economies life is to occasionally do a self-check on rationality and reason. So in your portfolio, so we want to talk about basically preparing for an economic downturn, and in your portfolio, what is the current state of mind for companies? Are they preparing for a recession, or is it like everyone is like, yeah, recession is coming, but my company is very strong, so I don't need to worry about it?
Yeah, I'm happy. I would say, don't even have those companies that have not addressed the kind of the cloud of recession looming in. But in general, I would say there is no such panic as what we had at the beginning of COVID, for example, when kind of the COVID crisis hit and everyone started panicking and like really cutting a lot of stuff and just like thinking of shutting down the startup. Now everyone is taking it pretty, I think, like fairly well, just really focusing on extending the runway. I think those companies that have some VCs that back them, they have this thinking actually of extending the runway, maybe compared to those that we meet and they don't have a VC, and then they might be a bit more opportunistic. Then they are saying like, no, don't worry, our revenues will grow like this. So that I see happening. But yeah, within the portfolio, I think the understanding is that story is not anymore not the only thing anymore. So you really definitely need metrics and financials, and that's pretty much it. So you go after that. And some of the companies decided to go at break even or profitable, which is probably questionable as that's an okay strategy for a VC-backed company. But yeah, for some it's just the only way to go.
For you as an investor, what were the dumbest or most irrational things companies spent money on in the good times? Well, it's, again, whatever examples you want to name.
Yeah. Buying illegal monkey. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding here. I think that's what we actually should be proud in the Baltics, that there is at least we don't see such irrational spending like mansions, private jets, and so on. And we should really actually be super proud about those successful founders, and not even founders, but the startuppers who are even they cashing out the capital as a part of the startup. They reinvesting in the ecosystem, and that's a very rational, I would say, way. That's why we are glowing and booming overall as an ecosystem, and that's what we should proud. Maybe later that we're posh enough, in the Baltics, We will see those irrational spendings, but so far everything is pretty rational, and actually we should be very proud about that.
Mm.
Okay, well, maybe buying Apple computers for every employee is irrational.
Not this year, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
good
not.
good
Building
old
culture.
Lenovo will do.
Building culture.
So, for example, people are raising, trying to raise funds, or we're trying to raise funds also to kind of prepare themselves for maybe period of uncertainty. I'm just thinking, is there a downside? Let's say you raised before when you could, you stashed some money aside. Is there a downside of trying to build too long runway now? You know, inflation is eating up, 20% a year, right? What's your, speculative thoughts on what runway is adequate to prepare for?
Yeah, I think it depends on the stage for sure, but for early stage, we say 12 months at least, like for really early stage, and then 18 months for pre-seed, seed stages, and then it can probably go even beyond that. But I think for like seed stage companies, 18 months is something that I would be looking for to really extend the lifetime. And also definitely kind of making sure that you can achieve something within that time. So not only extend the runway for the sake of extending the runway, because you might just be kind of, waiting for the better days to come, and knowing that VC money is anyways always tied to growth. So you have to have this growth mindset in place. Like you cannot allow yourself not to grow during that time. And so you can only extend the runway as long as it can help you grow within sufficient time frame. But yeah, I would not go less for 12 months, because then otherwise it would mean that you will keep on fundraising and fundraising and fundraising all the time.
And that is a busy ordeal. Know myself as well, but I think what you Jans meant. I don't think you can over-raise now, right? You cannot really raise too much now. You could probably before. But I think that the benefit of raising before those that big money was that you also got it at a much better valuation that you would get today. So I think that this kind of argument that they raised too much and now it's going to be all eaten up by inflation, I think it's not so worrisome, because they did get a pretty good valuation for that money. So I think we're fine.
I was just the inflation I brought up because I was thinking, have you seen people reacting to it? Because like Baltics are championing not only startups but also inflation rates in Europe now over 20%. And have you seen it, like pressure on wages growing, or just basic costs, or it's not that critical yet for startups?
I think we're going to see it. It's not like we're seeing now like it was, in the valley 3 months ago. The startups were firing punch pools of people and so on. So we saw some cutouts, and then it's natural. Maybe not so big drops currently, on the wages. It's still, the wages in the startups are, as twice bigger as median, salaries in the countries in all the Baltic states. So probably it's going to keep the same, but most probably it's going to impact future hirings. So far we're seeing this tendency that it's more and more, cautious on hiring new, upcoming people, especially in different rounds and so on.
So let's keep it to the early stage. So until Series A. So what are the key focus points for companies in these stages, and if there's any difference between, for example, seed and Series A? So what they should focus on while preparing for an inflation. Jesus.
Inflation, yeah. So I probably continue the thoughts here that typically, right after the Series A, you're entering in this super aggressive hiring mode, that where you're already bringing, the C-level, experts, and it's not easy to find. Typically, going to after, headhunting, even, out of the Baltics, and you're trying, to offer some good conditions, and et cetera, et cetera. And this aggressive hiring, what we already, seeing and saw, in our portfolio, out of our portfolio, that you're growing like, from 40, 50 people to hundreds of people, in a 6 months or less. So most probably, this inflation and the situation, it's getting, a bit, slowing down this aggressive and sometimes a bit blindly hiring on a seriously. When it comes to seed and then pre-seed rounds, it's still, this smaller teams like, key employees, the founders, the first hires, and most probably, it's, the things like cutouts are talking like in the pool in between and talked out. Some firings may be there as well, but I believe that it's a natural talk. What's going on, with the salary increase, what was year over year with this inflation, what's going on there, should we cut out or should we not increase, what's going on with the future hires, key positions, or everyone is taking another seat on a task level, etc. So it's more like inner talks, and every startup is actually talking about this now, and then talking with investors, what to do, how to solve it, and so, yeah.
Yeah, and Series A, I would say you are, or what your P&L says you are, and probably in seed you can still avoid this, but you are what your budget says you are. So that's still important.
But besides, obviously the biggest cost position talent for startups. So, but besides that, is there something else that you are advising companies, or they're doing by themselves? I don't know, becoming more aggressive on their pricing, trying to lock in some longer term cash flow contracts, or like securing that cash flow.
Yeah.
And also on the revenue side, because the problem with costs is that you can only decrease them by 100%, and then there's no further decrease that you can make. So yeah, it's a good point. I think even like upfront payments is something that's becoming much more popular. So like really making contracts not for a month, maybe it can be for half a year or a year. Upsells. So instead of pouring money into marketing that you don't really know how it can convert, or you might even know how it will convert, you actually use your resources to do the upsells to the clients you have. So I think that's that. Moving to as much as you can, like kind of the subscriptions and anything that's whereas you're kind of locked in for some period of time. So I think this is from pricing wise for sure, and increasing pricing. Also, some companies do that, but of course, in these times, it really depends on the sector, whom are you working with, and how how do you put it to the client. So usually you would come with some kind of almost additional product and say like, this is like, we will charge now you for this additionally, not that we increased our pricing. So this is how some of our companies are dealing with it. And then of course, the thing that we spoke is the runway, really trying to address, kind of measure what are the kind of biggest impact, biggest burn areas, biggest burn impact areas, but also which would be the easiest to cut out. So I think a lot of founders should have read Sequoia's, like kind of the memo or something. They have a super nice quadrant of how to address those expenses. And once you start looking in it that way, like where can you find the biggest burn impact, but the easiest to cut out, almost all of the companies went through that. So. And from the kind of other side of the table, so if I'm a company in this economic downturn trying to raise, then what investors are kind of focusing on? What is the most important from my side to convince you to invest?
I think of course we can always say team is the most important, but it's always important. Really, the bottom line, the only thing that's really important, can this round help you to get to another round? This one is always important, but last year you could rely on some bridging or opportunistic FOMO investing and all of that. Now it's really, you kind of feel that if you invest now, you really need to take that company to the next good round, hopefully not a bridge. So that's that. Even with the very good founders, they really have to prove that this will be enough to go after that milestone that we feel can secure them funding from seed funds.
And with the companies that you have already invested in, so how does that change your day? You working with the portfolio companies in these tough times, does the work become kind of more closer, more intense, or vice versa? You know, you let them deal with their issues and not bother them. So how does this change your day working with the portfolio companies?
Or the questions they ask help with probably also changing, or.
Yeah, I've seen this meme, I think, this week, where a VC is looking at a fireplace. So basically looking at startups. That's pretty much it. That's that about the portfolio. But definitely there has been much more, at least like from my perspective, has been much more intense work with some of the companies. So really, I would say around seed and Series A stages. This is where they were in this growth stage, and now you have to they start stagnating. So what do you do about it? And then, the rest of the portfolio that is in early stage, that's probably not that much affected. So they still are lingering around like the product market fit stage. But whenever the revenue and quick growth and number of employees are involved, that's been quite a lot of board meeting space and all of that. So.
Yeah, I would probably compliment here that, this, let's say, situation, if we may call it, it's happening 3 years starting with the COVID, right? And if you remember, that like 3 years ago, the first wave of the COVID, huge panic around and so on, that everyone was reacting with preparing some memos, one-pagers, how to act, sending to their portfolios, and being on a calls 24/7, how to manage, etc., etc. And now we have a lot of pressure on startup founders, shoulders and so on. But somehow there is no panic, and then definitely it's a rational ways. They're talking. There is more, I would say more often like board meetings and strategic, calls and so on. What's going on? What's happening? Reviewing, the financial part, reviewing the next steps, and then asking for some help. But overall, at least, we don't feel some panic or something like this. So it's rational moving forward.
So would you say that COVID in 2020 sort of, how to put it, taught something to people who went through that? They are less, reactive and less panicky now. Would that be true statement?
Yeah, I would say, that all the situation, making your skin, the harder and so on. So basically you are no more panicking. The serial entrepreneurs who've been in 2010 and see the consequences of that recession, they know how to act even, in all the situation. The same, for the first startups, for the first time founders, of course, they're afraid, of course, they a bit, panicking and so on, but it's happening, you cannot change the things, so, yeah.
Yeah, probably somebody who's been through, COVID and financial crisis. It's like this meme where two dudes about to be hanged, and this one asks, like, it's your first time?
First time, yeah, exactly.
So let's go to a returning segment of the show that hasn't been there for a while, which is me asking about my problems and trying to find solutions.
Therapy.
Let's call it the oldest therapist segment. So we already touched upon the labor market, and I mean, and it kind of is quite a big headache for me. Is this pressure on people? On poaching, on salaries, and I don't see any end in sight. While the certainty of my earnings growth is definitely less certain than the certainty of somebody from my team being poached next week. how do other founders deal with that? I mean, have you noticed any good tricks? Because I mean, it's a big pain.
It is a big pain, actually, you know, and I think we need to accept one reality here that there was you know a good research done recently by Google and Vsight that you know how the employees are picking where to work first of all, and if you put on a table like you know corporate and well-funded unicorn level startup, majority of them will pick you know the unicorn or well-funded startup. But if you pick, you know, the corporate and, you know, the young startup, you know, the early stage startup, they go to a corporate. The majority go to a corporate. So, and of course, it indicates that, you know, the tolerance of the risk, right? If the risk, you know, is low in the you know, well-funded startup, that's where the fun, the flexibility comes in, et cetera, et cetera. But when you put, you know, your salary, your income with a high, you know, risk, then all this nice stuff like flexibility, being cool in a startup life, and so on, it doesn't matter a lot, and that's every, you know, founder's headache. But I believe, you know, that in these times the ESOP jumps in, and this is something that actually plays as motivation as well. If you play it around the ESOP, how to keep the people in the company, you know, in the young early stage startup, and you know this works as a tool, and we're talking more and more about it. You know how companies are solving this, and yeah, you know it's definitely tough. You know, so the company culture, you know, the key employees is something that you should very you know work hard to build around you.
Yeah, and I think Uldis, I will not help you here, but I think the statistics was also that if you are a smaller startup, meaning you are not a unicorn, and the person is choosing between corporate and you would have to pay 43% more than what corporate offers for them to go to a startup.
Yeah, that is a bit.
You can cut this out for others not to hear.
That is a bit eye-opening in the sense that not eye-opening, but let's say explains a lot. and one thing that I also saw from this Vsight research is that what you mentioned, Marijus, about ESOPs, very nice and dandy in theory, but in reality, the numbers are pretty brutal. I think it was in Latvia, it was like 2% of people considered it as a strong motivator, and I have seen personally as well from my own experience that there are certain employees who value it and pay attention, but then a lot of them don't really see it as real.
But why is that? Were there answers? Why is that? Like they don't see it coming through?
It's just you know, critical mass, because like in Latvia, how many employees have cashed out? Like Printify, maybe a few more. It's just it's not in the DNA yet. Nobody knows what it feels like when you have been working for a couple of years and suddenly, you know, a couple of $100K drop on your head because of a successful secondary. So it just hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, I think it actually very well correlated with how much you know about ESOP. So if I don't know anything about it, I actually don't really care. If I've worked in an environment where I heard something, I care a little bit more. And maybe if I've received a little bit of ESOP, I want more of that. So really, it's a lot about education, but as long as you don't get into an environment where really people have cashed out and you see your fellow, like, I don't know, developers, like really, you know, driving a nice car or investing in just startups or something like that, then yeah, you wouldn't care actually. And we see that also when hiring for our fund, which is interesting because I understand when people are coming to a startup and they are coming up in different, for different roles. But when you come to work in venture capital, you're already assuming the risk in your head and you probably are a fan of it. But even then, some people say like, no, better pay me bigger salary instead of giving ESOP from your fund, which for me is crazy, but it is like that actually.
Interesting. Well, I mean, yeah, if the salary is big enough, I mean, you can save, and obviously you can also kind of, you know, you can start angel investing if you can save
and
enough,
you can
right?
spend.
So You can just spend.
I think that's the,
You can let
I think
it-
that's the primary
you can watch it
concern,
burn.
is that you can spend.
You can watch it burn, inflation burn, and 20% of it a year as well. So all sorts of consumption opportunities. Look, I wanted to ask, like, from your experience, you've seen so many startups, so many teams, successful, less successful, mistakes, good things they've done. Any scrappy advice or wisdom or tips for founders to go through? If not downturn, then certainly not a booming times that we are expecting for next year or probably even more.
Okay, so it's time for cliches, Marijus. Go.
Yes. We start with the cliche and we can finish with the cliche,
Yeah.
right? So hope for the best, and plan for the worst, right? But in the reality, those crises, let's call it crisis, it's happening, like every 10, 15 years. So if we take, last, 50 years, it's last 100 years, it's happening, so you cannot run out of it. It's different. So I think, you should accept it, what's going on, and it's naturally that, in those crises, there are opportunities, a different way opportunities. And startup founders overall are crazy people if they are in the ventures, so they're going after tough things, dreaming, big dreamers, and they're going. So there is, a lot what to learn in those situations, a lot what to learn, including, the bootstrapping, the hustling, how to solve, how to handle things, and so on. And all those skills are helping a lot in the good times as well. So.
Right.
So that's why you should take it, as a big learning, and it's tough. Definitely, testing who are around you, real people, hustlers, real people, who are with you, not just leaving, on the first day, on the hard times, and so on. So I would say, it's tough, but as well, it's something that you should learn a lot and to use it in your advantage in the future.
Yeah, I think it's what Janis said at the very beginning, that, there might never be a very good time to start a startup or something. Like there was a brief moment of that, but you don't know what's coming up. But I think maybe like for more practical, maybe some more scrappy advice, I would say like what we've seen, what founders were struggling with is they were so afraid of cutting some things out, of slowing down the growth, because they thought they are the only ones doing that. And we were like in so many of those board meetings, we kept on saying like, everyone is doing this. You're not alone who's like has to fire someone, has to cut out some benefits. And I think this is important to remember. Now, every single startup is addressing that. There is nothing like specific about you that, you should be like, you are the only one doing that. So, and that actually helped for many of our companies to change the course quite well.
Yeah, good point.
All right. Thanks, guys. It was a scary, depressive, but at the same time quite fun and insightful conversation. So
Halloween episode, really.
Yeah, really Halloween.
Yeah, we'll see how number of startups will decrease after this episode goes out. Amazing.
No, but really good. Check out also part 1 of this 2-episode series. We talked about this in 2 parts. So yeah, really exciting conversation.
all right.
Thank you.
Thanks and bye-bye.